Hello to all of you wonderful moms out there. This is episode 53 of the Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life podcast, the show where you discover how to reconnect with what makes you feel like you. I'm your host, Anokhi, and I am looking forward to today's episode with you. Have you ever sat down to work on an important task and then you find yourself like 20 minutes later deep in your email and scrolling social media and websites with no memory of how you got there? Do you constantly feel scattered and overwhelmed when you're trying to juggle all of your responsibilities? Your brain is in one place and your body is going through the motions of something else. Or maybe your mind is always racing with endless to-do lists and unfinished tasks. Well, I know what that's like because that used to be me, where you feel like you're just drowning in daily tasks. As moms, we're constantly juggling parenting, household management, and personal goals, often without adequate support. One minute, you're helping with homework, and then the next, you're answering work emails, and then suddenly you remember you need to schedule a doctor's appointment, all while mentally planning dinner. It's really exhausting, and so that's why today I'm going to talk about why your brain seems hardwired for distraction. I'll also share 5 easy fixes that'll help you regain your focus, productivity, and energy. This is actually part 1 of a 2-part series, and today is going to be focused on the sources of our distractions, those triggers, and how to remove them. And then next week in part 2, I'll discuss how you can better set yourself up for success more globally in your life, how to become a more focused woman overall. You'll find practical strategies of how to focus effectively and manage your time a little better, how to work in that busy life of yours, and finally break free from the distraction that's stealing all of your energy. So if you're ready to stop feeling distracted and reclaim control of your brain, then it's time to pay attention to this episode. Are you looking for a way to blend success and motherhood without losing sight of who you are? I get it. I've been there too. Hi, I'm Anokhi, a PhD researcher, business owner, and homeschooling mom of 2 boys. As your life coach, I help moms like you create a life you love at home and at work. If you're ready to stop feeling overwhelmed, overscheduled, and overlooked, and want a clear roadmap to a balanced life, a meaningful career, and finally feeling like yourself again while being the awesome mama that you are, you're in the right place. In this journey to create the life you truly desire, it's time to rediscover your dreams and achieve your ambitious mom life. If you've been finding value in this show, I would be so honored if you shared it with a friend who might also find the show useful. It's super easy. Just tap the share button in your podcast app and send it to someone who could benefit from these strategies. Your share could be exactly what another mom needs to hear today. Thank you. While I don't personally have ADHD, I understand the challenges that many people face with it. The reality is that being distractible or experiencing mom brain is a very real phenomenon. And this happens to most women at some point or the other. But I think it's really apparent in high-achieving moms. And why is that? Well, as high achievers, we get used to getting things done with this efficiency and mental clarity and almost to a degree of hyperfocus. But with surging hormones like estrogen and progesterone, which cycle naturally through our different phases of development, but also monthly, also a lack of sleep that we often experience, and that is dependent on so many other things, and a literal brain restructuring that happens as we embark on motherhood, it gets harder and harder to concentrate. So we become distractible. And that looks like having constant decision fatigue, which prevents us from moving forward because we have this constant flood of ideas, but we're struggling to take action. All of a sudden, we lose our ability to prioritize tasks effectively and determining what truly matters. Of course, that lack of sleep leads to sleep deprivation and low energy, so we feel that physical exhaustion. And there's this feedback loop to then making it even harder to focus. So as you probably know, high achievers typically have this stream of ideas and aspirations, and we genuinely want it all. But this mental hyperactivity can disrupt whatever task we're currently focused on, and it can even interrupt those precious quiet moments, like when you suddenly get a brilliant idea while you're trying to sleep or be fully present with your children. Now, we often see this as a character flaw, but I want to put this into a little bit of perspective here. Because, for one, it's actually a really common experience among ambitious mothers to be juggling multiple responsibilities, but also there's a scientific reason for this. You might actually remember back when you were pregnant having this mental fog where you started all of a sudden becoming really forgetful and you couldn't concentrate as well as you used to be able to. Well, neuroscientists have used brain imaging to track neurological changes in women from before pregnancy, remember those extra productive days that we used to have, all the way through to postpartum. And what they found was that there are significant alterations throughout this entire time. Specifically, they saw that the gray matter regions, like our prefrontal cortex and amygdala, were being pruned. They were kind of getting reorganized and decluttered, and then the white matter was increasing to support the fact that we were going to have all these caregiving tasks coming up. And their key conclusion is actually that mom brain isn't really a problem, but it's actually an essential and purposeful neurological change that's driven by female hormones like estrogen and progesterone. So it seems that our brains are purposefully being rewired as we grow into mothers in order to support our maternal responses, to our baby's cues, like when they're crying or what they need, and also to strengthen our bonding and to basically better equip us as mothers. I can actually distinctly remember what it felt like before I became a mom, when I was so much more productive. I had more energy and I could stay focused. And then after I became a mom and I was working, I remember once sitting at my desk with this deadline that was coming up. I had this report for work. And I actually had everything laid out, my research notes, I had an outline, and my laptop was ready to go. And I started typing, I heard my phone buzz, and I thought, just one quick check. And then 20 minutes later, I was frustrated because I had to recommit myself to getting back to my report and focusing. And then I remembered I had to send out this email about a completely different project. It had to get done. So I said, okay, I'm going to do that really quickly. And then that led me to checking other emails, which I didn't have to address right away. And that kind of spiraled into me completely reorganizing my inbox. I was clearly procrastinating and not getting back to my actual task at hand. So then an hour and a half later, I was nowhere near completing my original task. And then by the time I noticed the clock, like 3 hours had passed, my work block was nearly over, and my important report was nowhere near completion. It's times like those that I just feel so scattered, frustrated, and disappointed with myself. I had basically spent my entire work block being busy, but I wasn't productive. I was caught in this loop of this constant task switching, which really had left me exhausted, but I hadn't made any meaningful progress. And this pattern started to become more and more common and the norm for me after I became a mom. I would start my tasks with good intentions, but then I would get pulled in multiple directions by my own thoughts or digital distractions, and this belief that I was multitasking and being more productive and I was getting more done, but actually I wasn't really doing any one thing really well. What I really wanted was to be able to just make decisions really confidently and stop overthinking and over-researching. I wanted to reduce all that mental clutter that was leading to my distractions. I would have all these thoughts and ideas that would come into my head and basically pull me in multiple directions and cause me to not make progress in any one direction. And the most important thing to me was that I wanted to be a patient and present mom. But these distractions were preventing me from being fully engaged with my family and my kids in particular. I knew deep down that I could actually achieve more if I just focused on one thing at a time and stopped being distracted. And I can't help wondering how much of this is from just being a mom, because I was finding that it was getting harder and harder for me to focus, not just from pregnancy to having a baby, but also as my kids were growing up. And so that's why I want to talk about how we can eliminate these distractions. This is important because as high-achieving moms, focus is the gateway to both productivity and energy preservation. When we can direct our attention deliberately rather than being pulled in multiple directions, we can actually accomplish more meaningful work and feel less mentally drained. So learning to master focus is essential for breaking out of that exhaustion cycle that many of us find ourselves trapped in day after day. So let's talk about 5 common triggers for distraction and how we can eliminate those. You really need to know your specific triggers because this is going to be different for each of us. And you're going to find that some triggers are more problematic for you than others. But what I'm going to talk about right now are 5 common triggers I think that many of you are going to find prevent you from staying focused. If you've been listening to me for any length of time, you're not going to be surprised when I point out this first problematic area. That is devices and technology. Did you know that merely having your phone, for example, visible reduces your cognitive capacity, even when it's turned off, okay? So Just having your devices in your field of vision is going to constantly pull your attention away. It reduces your focus, and using our devices actually trains our brains to crave that constant stimulation. And so if this is a trigger for you, what you want to do is to create a dedicated technology-free zone and even mark in your time blocks when you need your phone to be put away. That way, you don't have any devices as a constant distraction for you. So I'm going to share all the things that I actually do towards this device-free zone. I actually talk a bit about this in episode 31, Calming Your Overwhelm by Planning with a Minimalist Mindset. And I'm going to link that episode in the show notes. So one thing is to just have a sort of phone parking station, which is away from your workspace where all devices can go when you really need to focus. So what that looks like for me is I have 3 floors in my house, and I have one spot for each floor where I typically keep my phone. And that way, I always know where it is. I'm not spending time looking for it when I don't have it and I need it. But for most of the things I'm doing on each of those floors, it's not right next to me. Another thing that's really easy to do is to just put your phone in airplane mode or focus mode. And that way you're spared all the notifications that pull you away from your work or when you are spending time with your family. And very importantly, when you're sleeping. Now, there's other things that I do as well, but I don't always do them regularly. But I sometimes have a mental idea of when I'm going to next check my phone. So I'll kind of gamify and say, okay, if I get X, Y, and Z done, then I will check my phone and start text messaging people that I want, for example. There are also very specific times in my day where it's absolutely offline hours. I mentioned sleeping, but also for us, it's all the meal times. We never bring our phones to the table anymore. And there are so many other things that I have experimented with. For example, removing a lot of apps from my phone. And one of my favorites is turning my screen to black and white mode so that overall the phone is a lot less attractive to me. There are tons of ideas in the book, The Opt-Out Family by Erin Lochner. I'm going to link that book in the show notes, but I refer to it a lot because I like testing out a lot of these ideas for myself and my family. The next trigger is mental clutter. See, our brains weren't designed to hold all the information we process daily. And so without a reliable external system where we can capture all of our ideas and thoughts, we end up experiencing this mental load, this weight of trying to remember everything. And it leads to decision fatigue and constant task switching. So you want to have a system for handling your ideas and tasks and information so that we can focus on a single task at hand and not feel like we have to constantly switch back and forth between activities. I'm talking about a personalized system for capturing, organizing, and processing information and tasks. Basically, a personal operating system, if you will. So what you want is a primary trusted capturing system. It can be digital or paper, but it has to include all of your ideas, tasks, and information. For me, my primary source for this is Notion. It's kind of my central hub for everything. But I also do have other notebooks that I keep when I'm on the go. I use the Notepad app in my phone, and I also have a paper version when I don't have my phone around because, like I just said before, I don't like to pull my phone out all the time. So the great thing about having a central hub is that you don't have to have one long running list of all your to-dos and tasks. You can start separating out your list for different contexts, things related to home and your family or work and errands or even meetings. How you organize those lists can be different. Maybe you have a workflow that you follow for projects, or maybe your meetings are in a calendar, or you have a digital paper planner that marks off all your time blocks. For me, this was a very iterative process that evolved into what it is now. And so I would say that if you're new to this concept, but you want to get this going, I would say start building it out very systematically, maybe on a week-by-week basis. Each week, you add one new context or system in place, like maybe having your time blocks in, or maybe setting up your calendar. And then once everything is set up in this central hub of yours, you can start reviewing it on a weekly basis and start updating your system to ensure that nothing falls through the cracks. Even now, after years of having this, I'm still constantly tweaking and making this central hub for me work even better for me. If you want to learn more about creating a central hub for your ideas, then check out my coaching program. That's where I help high-achieving moms like you reclaim your focus and create systems that actually work for your busy life. One mom shared with me that she was sort of desperate to find purpose again, but what she confessed was that she was getting pulled in multiple directions by her own thoughts and by what everyone else needed out of her. When you work with me, you're going to learn how to create the structure that you need to achieve balance while still nurturing those close family connections and time to yourself. We're going to develop a personalized system to help you stop drowning in your day-to-day and implement practical focus strategies like the ones that I have been sharing today. But yours will be customized specifically for your unique situation. Now, I'm opening up a few spots for a free exploratory call, and we can discuss your specific focus challenges or any other challenge that you're facing in terms of balance. And then together, we can create a clear path forward. I want to help you regain control of your day and finally feel like yourself again. So click on the link in the show notes to schedule your free call. Let's work together to turn your scattered thoughts into real intentional action. The third trigger is maybe not so obvious, but it's external input from people around you. What I'm referring to is when people say you should, or other people's expectations create that constant mental clutter that you have. This external noise makes it so difficult to hear your own priorities and pulls your focus away from what truly matters to you. What happens to me is that instead of listening to my gut or feeling confident in my decisions, I now hear everyone else's voices swirling inside my head, and then I start to feel like I don't really know which direction to go or whose advice to follow. And the reason this is distracting is that then you're constantly processing all of these comments and suggestions and feedback from others, which pulls your focus away from your own priorities. Now, if you have a life plan, you are not going to be as vulnerable to this type of thing because you're going to be so crystal clear on what your priorities are. But what you want to do is to create and enforce clear boundaries around your time, your energy, and your focus, which are all things that you establish with your life plan. So if you don't have a life plan in place, but you're interested in setting up these boundaries, I'm going to give you a really quick blueprint for this. So the first thing is to identify your non-negotiables and protect them fiercely. So, for example, family dinner time, or maybe your morning routine where you're looking for calmness, or maybe the times that you're sleeping. And then filter any advice that you receive through your own values and your priorities. You can ask yourself a question like, does this align with what matters to me the most right now? And determine yes or no. If what you're getting is a request of your time or attention, then before you say yes to that, just pause for a second and again, ask yourself the same question. Sometimes it even helps to pause before you reply because so many of us tend to be yes people, right? We like to please people. We like to do more. So just pausing before you commit to it can really reduce some of your distractions. And having some scripted responses to common requests that you get, especially at work, can really help. Like, that sounds really interesting. I just need to check on my commitments before I can say yes. I sometimes say, I need to check with my husband first. Now, if you're one of those people that's gotten a scripted response from me, I'm sorry, but kind of not sorry at the same time. It's really useful and spares you so much time and energy. And one of the easiest things you can do is to limit your information intake in the first place by unsubscribing from emails and group chats and even your social media consumption. Because I'm sensitive to this idea of digital clutter and constant information overwhelm, I only send my newsletter out twice a month, and I make it really high impact by putting in so many tactical things for you, and I make it as gentle as possible in terms of how many times you come in contact with my emails. The fourth trigger is constant approval seeking. This is where you kind of create this dependency cycle that actually drains your mental energy and prevents you from taking decisive action. When your action is driven by pleasing others and approval from other people, and you don't actually know your own personal why behind it, you're going to find one of two things happen. Either you get stuck in analysis paralysis, or when you do take action, you're going to find that you're actually less productive than if you had just done it from a place of confidence in the first place. You're also going to feel so much more exhausted because you're spending your energy seeking validation instead of just trusting your intuition and moving forward. So what I want you to do is to start developing the practice of trusting your own judgment and intuition before seeking external validation. There is a time and place for seeking others' advice and external validation, but all of your actions should be anchored by your own personal mission. So what does this intuition first approach look like? Well, before asking for opinions, start writing down your own thoughts, or at least mentally curate your own thoughts so that you understand what your perspective on this idea, project, action is. Then you want to limit the number of people that you consult on any decision. There's no proper number. I mean, maybe 3 or less. Maybe have designated people that you go to for specific things. I like to set deadlines for myself on really important matters so that I stop myself from doing endless research and endless surveying of other people's thoughts. I'm a huge proponent of making small decisions quickly and taking that small first step because it helps you flex that intuition muscle and you start to gain confidence, and then you can start taking more action and even bigger action more decisively. And like in all things in our life, we're constantly doing these mini experiments, right? Every time we do something out of trial and error, or we test something out even systematically, making small refinements or taking small actions, if it's possible, make sure you have a way of tracking and documenting what seems to be successful, what has worked out well for you, because then you can take those and build off of them instead of starting from scratch every time. When you are ditching certain ideas, it also prevents you from throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You want to keep the things that have been fruitful for you. And the fifth trigger, which I couldn't have ended this episode without talking about, is perfectionism. Perfectionism keeps us stuck in those details and endless refinement instead of completing our projects. And perfection actually correlates with procrastination, anxiety, and reduced productivity. We tend to get bogged down in all the details, especially as ambitious moms, rather than focusing on what the actual one next step we can take is. I want you to adopt this mindset and build out a workflow that allows you to prioritize forward movement rather than flawless execution. Stop getting bogged down by the details and ask yourself, what are the next 3 things I need to do? And how can I take action on those things? I talk about my take action cycle quite a bit, and so I'll link an episode which lays out all the steps of that. Now, there are all kinds of tactics that can help you focus on progress over perfection, but I'm just going to point out one thing because I think this is the easiest. I like working with ugly first drafts. And I'm not just talking about when you're writing and a literal drafting of your ideas. I'm talking about any time you take action. Do it messy and with drama if you need to, but take that action. And then you can always go back and either review, how could I have done this better? In most cases, there's always opportunities to improve upon what you did so that you can take that action and then make it a little better. You can practice your perfectionism through iteration rather than having everything perfect in order to take the first step. All right, my wonderful high-achieving mamas, let's recap what we've covered today about why your brain seems wired for distraction and how you can reclaim your focus and energy again. As we discussed, your scattered thoughts aren't really a character flaw, right? There is a biological reason for it. But when you know what your triggers are, then you can actually do something about them. So I'm going to quickly list what the 5 distraction triggers I talked about today are, because those are ones that many moms seem to be dealing with. The first one was devices and technology. You want to create a device-free zone and dedicated focus blocks. 2 was mental clutter. That means developing your personal operating system and a reliable method to capture all of your ideas and tasks and things like that. 3, external input from others. This is where you can use that really easy blueprint that I offered for setting up boundaries so that you can filter any advice you get through your own values and priorities. 4, approval seeking. You want to practice relying on your own intuition before you start taking in and seeking opinions from others. And then 5, dealing with perfectionism, where I want you to focus on initially making progress rather than taking perfect steps. It's okay to start off with good enough, and then you can systematically refine so that the final outcome meets the high standards that you're used to. Small changes are going to lead to big results when it comes to reclaiming your focus. So you don't have to do it all at once. I gave you a lot of ideas in today's episode, and so just think about one focus area and work on that. Over time, you can start incorporating all of this in a more comprehensive way. So I would save this episode and come back to it every so often. Now, in next week's episode, which will be part 2, we're going to build on these fixes and explore how you can set yourself up for success in a more global fashion. And I'll be sharing some powerful concentration hacks that ambitious moms like you can use immediately. This is Anokhi. I'm signing off until next time, and we'll continue our journey to help you stay focused and energized so that you can create the impact that you've been dreaming about. I hope today's episode will help you create time and freedom to pursue something you love to do. If you enjoy this show, please subscribe and tell other purpose-driven mamas about it. Who knows? You might even make a new friend by sharing a tip. It's all free. By the way, it would be amazing to hear what you think about the show when you leave a review on Apple Podcasts. After all, my passion is to make this a great experience for you. I'll see you next week for another episode of Achieve Your Ambitious Mom Life with Anokhi Kapasi.